All right, let's just get right into it. Shopping for a new laptop? It can feel like you're trying to crack some kind of secret code, right? There are dozens of specs, and it's so easy to get totally overwhelmed. But what if I told you there's one spec that matters way, way more than all the others for how your laptop actually feels to use every day? In this explainer, we're going to cut through all that noise and focus on the one thing you absolutely cannot afford to get wrong.
So what is it? What's the single biggest mistake people make? I'll tell you what it's not. It's not the processor. It's not the screen size. And it's not even how much storage you get. No, it's a component that gets overlooked all the time, and getting it wrong can absolutely cripple even the most powerful, expensive machine out there. Stick around, and I'll show you exactly what it is and how to avoid this trap.
First, let's talk about a feeling we all know way too well. That sense of confusion, whether you're staring at a wall of laptops at a store or scrolling through endless spec sheets online.
Yeah, you get hit with this just barrage of numbers and letters, gigahertz, terabytes, nits, cores. Marketers, they love to flash the big, impressive numbers at you. But the one that really matters for your day-to-day performance, it's often buried in the fine print.
So, it's time to pull back the curtain on this mystery component. What we're talking about is RAM, which stands for Random Access Memory. So, what in the world is RAM? Well, you can think of it as your computer's high-speed, short-term memory. It's the place where everything that's currently happening happens. It's what we call volatile, which just means it gets wiped clean every time you shut down. But while your computer is on, believe me, it is the fastest piece of your entire system.
You know, the best way to picture this is with an analogy. Imagine your RAM is your desk. It's your immediate workspace. And your hard drive or your SSD, that's the big filing cabinet down the hall. Everything you're actively working on, your documents, your apps, your browser tabs, it's all laid out right there on the desk for instant access.
Let's take web browsing, something we all do. When you click on Chrome, the system goes to that slow filing cabinet, your storage, grabs the program, and puts it right on your super-fast RAM desk. And then every single tab you open, every extension you run, it all lives in RAM. And that's why you can flick between 10 different websites in a split second. Your computer isn't running down the hall to the filing cabinet every time. The work is right there in front of it.
But here's the catch. This brilliant system has one critical weakness. What happens when your desk gets too cluttered? What happens when you run out of space?
This right here is the most important question. If RAM is your active workspace, what happens when it's completely full? Because this is the exact moment your brand new, super expensive laptop can suddenly start to feel frustratingly slow.
Now, when your RAM fills up, your computer doesn't just give up. It starts to, well, panic. It starts taking things from your super-fast desk and shuffling them off to that slow filing cabinet down the hall, your SSD. This emergency overflow parking lot, that's what we call virtual memory.
And here is where the numbers really, really matter. Let's say your typical day, your browser, some music, a few documents, takes up about 10 gigabytes of space. On a laptop with 16 gigs of RAM, hey, no problem. You've got plenty of desk space to spare. But on an 8 gigabyte system, you've already hit a wall. Your computer is now forced to constantly shuffle things back and forth to that slow virtual memory, creating a massive, massive slowdown.
This sequence is the cause of so much frustration. First, your fast RAM maxes out. Then, the system desperately starts using your slow storage as a backup. And finally, you're the one who feels the pain. You see that spinning beach ball, you click on a tab and have to wait for it to reload, or an app just gives up and crashes entirely.
And if you think 8 gigabytes sounds like plenty, think again. Just the operating system itself, like Windows 11 and all its background tasks, can easily chew up over 4 gigabytes of RAM, and that's before you've even opened a single app. That leaves you with barely any workspace for the stuff you actually want to do.
Okay, so you might be thinking, well, hasn't this always been an issue? And yeah, you're right, it has. But today, right now, getting this decision wrong is so much more permanent and honestly so much more punishing than it has ever been. Let me show you why.
There are 3 huge reasons this is a modern-day trap. First, most laptops now use what's called integrated graphics, meaning the graphics chip shares your main system RAM. So if you do any gaming or video editing, you're going to run out of space even faster. Second, and this is the real killer, most laptop RAM is now soldered directly onto the motherboard. You can't upgrade it, ever. And third, everything we use, from Chrome to the latest games, just keeps getting hungrier and hungrier for more RAM.
Look, that last point is so important it's worth saying again. Unlike the old days where you could just buy another stick of RAM and pop it in, that's gone.
The amount of RAM you choose on day one is the amount you are stuck with for the entire life of that laptop. That decision is final.
So, after all that doom and gloom, what's the answer? What's the solution? Well, thankfully, it's actually incredibly simple. There's one golden rule that will save you from this entire performance nightmare.
Here it is, 16 gigabytes. For pretty much everyone in 2026 and for the next few years, this is the absolute non-negotiable minimum amount of RAM you should get in a new laptop, period. Especially if you can't upgrade it later. It is the single best way to future-proof your purchase.
Now this brings up a really common choice you have to make, especially if you're on a budget. So what's the smarter move? Let me make it easy for you. It is always better to get a slightly less powerful processor paired with 16 gigs of RAM than it is to get a faster, top-of-the-line CPU that's just going to be starved for memory with only 8 gigs.
And hey, this isn't just a PC thing. This is huge in the Apple world. Let's say you're choosing between a slightly older M1 MacBook that has 16 gigs of RAM and a brand new, shiny M3 model that only has 8. You know what? The older M1 is the smarter long-term buy. That extra RAM is going to keep it feeling fast and responsive long after that new 8-gig model starts to slow down and struggle.
Our source material had this quote that just sums it up perfectly. Having a powerful processor with not enough RAM, it's like having a supercar, but you're stuck on a bumpy road with a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit. You have all that potential, all that horsepower under the hood, but the bottleneck, that lack of RAM, means you can never, ever actually use it.
So here it is, the one thing to take away from all of this. When you buy a laptop with too little RAM, what you're really doing is building a permanent speed limit into your machine, a speed limit that you can never get rid of.
And that really just leaves us with one final question for you to think about when you go to buy your next laptop. Are you buying a machine that's built for an open road, ready for speed, or are you buying one that's designed from day one to be stuck in traffic? Now you know the difference.